$500 million. Nathaniel Blackwood's voice sliced through the silence of the mahogany-paneled office. That's my final offer for your daughter's hand. Winston Reed's face drained of color as he stared at the documents spread across the desk. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Blackwood Tower, Boston's skyline glittered against the twilight sky, indifferent to the transaction taking place on the 87th floor. This is barbaric, Amber Reed whispered, her nails digging crescents into her palms. At 22, she never imagined being traded like a corporate asset. Yet here she stood, watching her father consider the offer that would save Reed Pharmaceuticals from bankruptcy and protect her 16-year-old sister Olivia's future. Nathaniel, 34 and arguably the most powerful tech magnate on the East Coast, didn't acknowledge her protest. His attention remained fixed on Winston, dark eyes unreadable behind designer glasses. Your company's value drops by approximately $3 million every hour you delay, Mr. Reed. I suggest you decide quickly. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Blackwood, the board members have arrived for the 7 o'clock meeting. Tell them to wait. Nathaniel dismissed his assistant without taking his eyes off Winston. Well, Amber stepped forward. May I speak with you privately? For the first time, Nathaniel looked directly at her. His gaze traveled clinically from her face down to her sensible heels, assessing her like one might evaluate a racehorse. 5 minutes, he conceded, gesturing toward a side door. The adjacent conference room felt cavernous and cold. Amber crossed her arms, fighting a shiver as Nathaniel closed the door. Let me be clear, Ms. Reed. This arrangement would benefit both our interests. Your father's company survives, your sister's education continues uninterrupted, and you become Mrs. Blackwood, with all the privileges that entails. And what exactly do you get from this medieval arrangement? Amber challenged. Something dangerous flickered across his face. A socially acceptable partnership that satisfies my board's concerns about stability, plus the alliance with Reed Pharmaceuticals I need for my next venture. You could just buy the company outright. I could, he agreed. But this arrangement provides additional benefits. The implication hung in the air between them. Amber refused to flinch. I want terms. A hint of surprise crossed his features. Go on. My sister gets a trust fund securing her education through graduate school. My father retains 40% ownership of Reed Pharmaceuticals. And I want a sunset clause, 5 years, and then I'm free to leave with appropriate compensation. Nathaniel's lips twitched. Impressive negotiation skills. 3 years, not 5. Your father keeps 30%, non-voting shares. The trust fund for your sister is acceptable. And my freedom after 3 years? With a non-disclosure agreement and no financial compensation beyond what you received during our marriage. Amber swallowed hard. One last condition. This marriage remains unconsummated unless I choose otherwise. This time, Nathaniel actually smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Agreed, with a caveat. We present a united front publicly. No separate residences, no visible discord. And you accompany me to all social and business functions as required. Amber extended her hand. Deal. Instead of shaking it, Nathaniel took her wrist, his thumb pressing lightly against her racing pulse. I look forward to our partnership, Ms. Reed. When they returned to the office, Winston looked up expectantly. The contract awaited them on the desk, the legal language translating their lives into clauses and subclauses. Amber, you don't have to do this, Winston whispered, suddenly finding his backbone too late. Don't pretend you're giving me a choice now, she replied quietly. You made this mess. I'm fixing it. Nathaniel's attorney stepped forward with the prenuptial agreement. 50 pages detailing every aspect of a relationship reduced to legal obligations and financial terms. Amber signed each flagged page, her signature growing sharper with each commitment. When she reached the final page, she hesitated, pen hovering above the line. Across the table, Nathaniel watched her with calculating intensity. Second thoughts, Ms. Reed? Amber met his gaze. Just wondering what it says about you that you'd trade $500 million for a wife you don't love. About the same as it says about you for accepting, he countered. She signed with a decisive stroke. The difference is, I'm doing it for my family. What's your excuse? Nathaniel took the contract, his signature joining hers with elegant precision. Everyone has their reasons, Ms. Reed. You'll discover mine soon enough. As the attorneys filed the paperwork, Nathaniel checked his watch. The ceremony takes place this Saturday at my estate. Keep it small, Immediate family only. My staff will handle arrangements. This Saturday? That's in 3 days, Winston sputtered. I prefer efficiency, Mr. Reed. Besides, Nathaniel added, his gaze lingering on Amber. Why delay the inevitable? After they left Blackwood Tower, Amber stood on the sidewalk, staring up at the gleaming monolith she'd agreed to join. Her father hailed a cab, but she remained rooted to the spot. Coming, Amber? I just sold myself to protect you and Olivia, she said quietly. The least you can do is give me a moment to mourn my freedom. As her father ducked into the cab, Amber's phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. Car will collect you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring only personal items. Everything else will be provided. NB. Amber looked back up at Blackwood Tower, where a single office remained illuminated against the darkening sky. Her future husband, already dictating the terms of her new life. She typed a single reply before walking away. I'll bring whatever I damn well please. The Blackwood estate sprawled across 30 acres of manicured grounds in Wellesley, Massachusetts, 20 miles west of Boston. As the black Bentley passed through wrought iron gates, Amber pressed her forehead against the cool window, counting the seconds until her incarceration began. 3 days had passed in a blur of paperwork, rushed goodbyes, and a wedding ceremony so clinical it might have been a board meeting. Only Olivia's tears had felt real. Her sisters whispered, I'm sorry, the only genuine emotion in a room full of strangers and lawyers. The Bentley stopped before a limestone mansion that looked more like a museum than a home. Georgian columns framed the entrance where Mrs. Fairchild, the housekeeper Nathaniel had introduced at the wedding, waited with rigid posture. Welcome home, Mrs. Blackwood, the woman said, her expression giving nothing away. Amber didn't correct the title she hadn't earned yet. The marriage remained unconsummated, as stipulated in their contract, but no one else needed to know that detail. Mr. Blackwood apologizes for his absence, Mrs. Fairchild continued, leading Amber through an entrance hall that echoed with emptiness despite its ornate furnishings. Business in New York. He'll return tomorrow evening for the reception. Reception? Amber stopped at the foot of a grand staircase. The formal introduction of Mrs. Nathaniel Blackwood to Boston society. 60 guests. Black tie. Mrs. Fairchild recited this as if reading from an agenda. Your dress fitting is scheduled for 3 o'clock. I wasn't informed of any reception. It's in the Social Obligations Clause, page 37, subsection C of your agreement. The housekeeper's thin smile suggested she knew far more about the contract than any employee should. Your quarters are in the East Wing. This way, please. Amber's quarters proved to be a suite larger than her family's entire apartment. A sitting room with antique furniture opened to a bedroom dominated by a 4-poster bed draped in silk. Beyond that, a dressing room and marble bathroom completed her gilded prison. Your things have been unpacked, Mrs. Fairchild gestured to the closet. Mr. Blackwood had your wardrobe supplemented with appropriate attire. Amber opened the closet to find her modest collection dwarfed by rows of designer clothing, tags still attached. I don't need his charity. It's not charity, Mrs. Blackwood. It's branding. Amber turned to face the housekeeper. Excuse me. You represent the Blackwood name now. Your appearance reflects on Mr. Blackwood's standing. Mrs. Fairchild's gaze swept critically over Amber's jeans and sweater. The stylist arrives at 1 to discuss your image requirements. After the housekeeper left, Amber explored her new home, quickly discovering the boundaries of her cage. Her key card accessed only certain areas: her suite, the main floor public rooms, the kitchen, and the pool. The West Wing, including Nathaniel's quarters, remained locked. Similarly, the 3rd floor and basement level denied her entry. The household staff treated her with distant politeness that bordered on surveillance. The chef inquired about dietary preferences while noting her responses in a tablet. The groundskeeper nodded respectfully, but reported her movements via radio when he thought she couldn't hear. By evening, Amber had endured a 3-hour session with a stylist who spoke about her as if she weren't present, a meeting with an etiquette coach who critiqued everything from her posture to her speech patterns, and a dinner served in solitary splendor in a dining room built for 30. Night fell, and the mansion grew quieter. Amber paced her suite, the reality of her situation sinking in. This wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. It was a complete identity erasure. Nathaniel Blackwood wasn't just buying a wife. He was manufacturing one to his specifications. She tried her key card on the West Wing entrance again, unsurprised when the light flashed red. As she turned away, she noticed a shadow move in the darkened hallway. Jenkins, the security chief, watching silently before disappearing around a corner. Back in her suite, Amber found a leather-bound daily planner on her bed that hadn't been there before. Inside, her next 2 weeks were already scheduled in 15-minute increments. Charity committee meetings, luncheons with wives of Nathaniel's business associates, fittings for her public wardrobe, sessions with a personal trainer, and appointments with Nathaniel's preferred dermatologist and cosmetic dentist. A note in precise handwriting sat atop the planner. These obligations are non-negotiable. The car will be ready at 8 a.m. tomorrow. NB. Amber tossed the planner across the room. She grabbed her phone to call Olivia, only to discover no signal. The mansion's stone walls blocked reception, and her attempts to connect to the Wi-Fi network were denied access. In the sitting room, she found a landline and dialed her sister's number, but a recorded message informed her that outgoing calls required an access code. She slammed the receiver down, fighting rising panic. She tried her suite's door, half expecting it to be locked. It opened, but the hallway beyond held another surprise. Jenkins stationed at the corridor's end, ostensibly reviewing something on a tablet, but clearly monitoring her movements. "Is there something you need, Mrs. Blackwood?" he asked without looking up. "Privacy," Amber replied. "Am I a prisoner here?" Jenkins finally met her gaze. "You're a security priority, ma'am. Mr. Blackwood has many enemies. Your safety is my responsibility. I need to call my sister. All communications are routed through the secure server. I'll arrange access for you tomorrow, after the protocols are established." Amber retreated to her suite, locking the door behind her. She moved to the window, contemplating the 3-story drop to the gardens below. Security lights illuminated the grounds where 2 guards with dogs patrolled the perimeter. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find a young maid holding a silver tray with a cup of tea. "Mrs. Fairchild thought you might have trouble sleeping your first night, Mrs. Blackwood." Amber accepted the tea, catching a glimpse of a small pill beside the cup. "What's this?" "Just a sleep aid, ma'am. Mr. Blackwood insists all household members maintain optimal health routines." Amber closed the door, dumped both tea and pill into a potted plant, and curled up fully clothed on the massive bed. Tomorrow, she would demand answers from Nathaniel, starting with why his staff treated her more like an asset to be managed than a wife. As she drifted toward uneasy sleep, her phone suddenly chimed, the first notification since arriving. A text from Nathaniel. "The East Wing security feed shows you've been testing boundaries. I admire initiative, but don't mistake monitoring for imprisonment. Everything in my world is protected, including you. Sleep well. We have much to discuss tomorrow." Amber stared at the message, then slowly looked up at the ceiling, searching for the cameras she hadn't thought to check for. Her new reality crystallized in that moment. She wasn't just married to Nathaniel Blackwood. She had entered his ecosystem, where nothing happened without his knowledge or consent. She typed back, "Is there anywhere in this mausoleum where I'm not being watched?" His reply came seconds later, "The bathroom. Even I have limits, Mrs. Blackwood." Amber grabbed her pillow and blanket and moved to the marble bathroom, making a bed in the empty tub. Small victories would have to sustain her until she understood exactly what game Nathaniel was playing and how to beat him at it. The reception was a masterclass in political theater. Amber stood beside Nathaniel, his hand resting possessively at the small of her back as Boston's elite offered congratulations they didn't mean for a marriage nobody believed was real. Her couture gown, selected by Nathaniel's stylist, felt like armor rather than clothing, structured midnight blue silk that transformed her into someone she barely recognized. "Senator Harrison, you remember my wife," Nathaniel said to a silver-haired man whose eyes lingered too long on Amber's neckline. "A pleasure to see you again, Mrs. Blackwood," the senator replied, though they'd never met. Everyone played along with the fiction that this wasn't Amber's first appearance in their world. Nathaniel had briefed her thoroughly on each guest during the car ride from the bridal salon, expecting perfect recall of connections and relationships she'd never been part of. "The Harrison energy bill requires your husband's support," the senator continued. "Perhaps you could put in a good word." Before Amber could respond, Nathaniel's grip tightened imperceptibly. "My wife doesn't discuss business at social functions, Senator." "Old-fashioned of me, I know." The message was clear. Amber was decorative, not functional. Property, not partner. As the evening progressed, her cheeks ached from forced smiles while Nathaniel worked the room with practiced efficiency. He never strayed more than arm's length from her side, yet they existed in separate orbits, connected only by the performance they presented. It wasn't until the final guest departed near midnight that Nathaniel's public persona slipped. In the mansion's grand foyer, he loosened his bow tie and exhaled slowly. "You did well," he said, surprising her with what sounded like genuine approval. "Harrison was testing you." "They all were," Amber replied, stepping out of her stilettos, waiting for the gold digger to reveal herself. Something shifted in Nathaniel's expression, a brief flash of what might have been respect. "They'll continue testing you. It never stops." A grandfather clock somewhere struck midnight. Amber tensed, suddenly aware that they were truly alone together for the first time since the wedding. Tonight was their wedding night, contract clause notwithstanding. "Your room has been prepared," Nathaniel said, dispelling the tension. "Mrs. Fairchild left refreshments. Not sleep aids, I hope." His eyebrow arched. "You noticed that? I've spoken to her about respecting your preferences." "Have you spoken to her about spying on me?" Amber challenged. "The staff answers to me," he replied simply. "Their loyalty is absolute." "So I've gathered." She moved toward the staircase, then paused. "Why did you marry me, really? And don't say business alliance. You could have acquired my father's company without the matrimonial theatrics." Nathaniel studied her, his expression unreadable. "Everyone has their reasons, Amber. Sometimes they're not what they appear." "That's not an answer. It's all you're getting tonight." He checked his watch. "I have calls with Tokyo in an hour. We'll talk tomorrow." Amber watched him walk away, shoulders straight despite the late hour, control never faltering. Then she made her way up the curved staircase, the emptiness of the massive house pressing in around her. She had just changed into a nightgown when a discordant sound floated through the hallways. Piano music, hesitant at first, then gaining confidence. Curiosity overrode caution. Following the melody, Amber discovered a room her key card hadn't previously accessed was now unlocked. The music room was smaller than expected, dominated by a grand piano where Nathaniel sat, suit jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows as his fingers moved across the keys. His eyes were closed, face transformed by an emotion she couldn't name. Amber stepped back, but the floorboard creaked beneath her feet. Nathaniel's hands stilled immediately, the spell broken. "I'm sorry," she said. "I heard music." He didn't turn. "You should be asleep." "So should you." She ventured further into the room. "Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff." He closed the piano lid with careful precision. "A habit from childhood. My mother insisted on lessons." The casual mention of his mother, the first personal detail he'd volunteered, caught Amber off guard. "You play beautifully." "I play adequately." He stood, mask firmly back in place. "The door should have been locked." "Maybe you wanted someone to hear," she suggested. His eyes narrowed fractionally. "I don't do anything without intention, Amber." "Then what was your intention with me?" She gestured between them. "This arrangement. The contract. What do you really want?" For a moment, she thought he might actually answer. Instead, he moved past her toward the door. "It's late. You should rest." "Nathaniel." His name felt strange on her tongue, intimate in a way their relationship wasn't. "If I'm going to live this lie with you, I deserve to know why." He paused at the threshold, shoulders rigid. "Some truths are better earned than given freely." Then he disappeared into the darkened hallway, leaving Amber alone with the silent piano and more questions than before. She returned to her suite, mind racing. The glimpse of Nathaniel at the piano had revealed something the business mogul kept carefully hidden: humanity. Whatever his motives, they ran deeper than corporate mergers or social standing. Sleep proved elusive. Around 3 in the morning, Amber abandoned the attempt and wandered to her sitting room, drawn to a stack of books that had appeared on her coffee table. First editions of classic novels she'd mentioned loving during their wedding dinner. She hadn't thought he was listening when she'd nervously filled silence with chatter about literature. As she lifted Jane Eyre, a folded newspaper clipping fluttered to the floor. A 20-year-old obituary for Elizabeth and James Blackwood, killed in a car accident, survived by their son Nathaniel. The carefully preserved clipping seemed out of place among the books, as if someone had used it as a bookmark and forgotten it. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. When she opened the door, The hallway stood empty except for a silver tray holding a steaming mug of chamomile tea, no pill this time, and a handwritten note. Music helps with insomnia. Third drawer of your bedside table. In the drawer, she found a small music player and earbuds. The single playlist contained nocturnes and sonatas, including the Rachmaninoff piece Nathaniel had been playing. As dawn approached, Amber finally drifted to sleep with the music in her ears, the obituary tucked under her pillow, and the strangest feeling that the man she'd married was not at all who she'd believed him to be. Morning brought a different Nathaniel, coolly efficient, reviewing contracts over breakfast, issuing directives to his staff, while barely acknowledging Amber's presence. If not for the music player and the books, she might have imagined their midnight encounter. "You have a charity luncheon at noon," he informed her, eyes on his tablet. "Jenkins will drive you. I'd rather take myself." "That's not how this works." He glanced up briefly. "Your safety is non-negotiable. My independence isn't a security risk." Something flashed in his eyes. Concern, perhaps, though it vanished too quickly to identify. "There are people who would use you to get to me. Until you understand the threats, you follow protocol." Before she could argue, his phone rang. Nathaniel excused himself, the business mask firmly back in place as he strode from the room. Amber was left with her cooling coffee and the distinct impression that her husband was keeping secrets far more significant than business deals. That afternoon, returning from the interminable charity luncheon, Amber made Jenkins drop her at the public library instead of the mansion. Ignoring his protests, she spent hours searching newspaper archives until she found what she was looking for: detailed coverage of the accident that claimed Nathaniel's parents. "Blackwood Tech Pioneers Killed in Suspicious Crash," the headline read. "Investigation ongoing. Rumors of industrial sabotage. Orphaned heir to revolutionary medical interface technology." What the articles didn't explain was why the obituary Nathaniel kept looked worn from frequent handling, or why a man who controlled his emotions so rigidly would play Rachmaninoff in the middle of the night like a requiem. When Jenkins finally tracked her down, his typically impassive face showed genuine concern. "Mrs. Blackwood, we've been looking everywhere for you. I needed some air." Mr. Blackwood was worried. Jenkins hesitated. More than worried. Something about his tone made Amber look up from the microfiche reader. "What aren't you telling me?" Jenkins' gaze shifted to the newspaper article still displayed on the screen. His expression darkened. "It's not my place to say, ma'am. But if you're researching that night, ask Mr. Blackwood about Project Lazarus, and about Winston Reed's role in it." Her father's name hit like a physical blow. "What about my father?" But Jenkins was already retreating, professional mask firmly back in place. "We should return to the estate, Mrs. Blackwood. Your husband is waiting." Nathaniel was waiting in his study when Amber returned, standing by the window with a tumbler of amber liquid, darkness gathering outside matching his expression. He didn't turn when she entered. "Jenkins says you were researching my parents' accident." His voice was neutral, but tension radiated from his shoulders. Amber approached cautiously, stopping at the edge of the oriental rug that defined his workspace. "I found an obituary among my books. I was curious." "Curious," he repeated, taking a measured sip. "About a 20-year-old tragedy." "About you," she corrected. "And about Project Lazarus." The tumbler froze halfway to his lips. When he finally turned, his eyes were glacial. "Where did you hear that name?" "Does it matter? I want to know what my father had to do with your parents' deaths." Nathaniel set down his drink with deliberate care. "Jenkins has overstepped. Or maybe he's the only honest person in this house." Amber held her ground as Nathaniel approached. "I signed a contract to be your wife, not your prisoner or your puppet. I deserve the truth." For a long moment, he studied her, calculation evident in his gaze. Then he reached into his desk, withdrew a slim file folder, and held it out. "Your father wasn't always a pharmaceutical executive," he said as she took the folder. 20 years ago, he was lead security consultant for Blackwood Medical Technologies. His job was protecting company assets, including my parents. Inside the folder were security credentials, showing a younger Winston Reed in a Blackwood corporate uniform, and incident reports signed with his familiar scrawl. "The night they died, my parents were transporting a prototype medical interface, Project Lazarus. Revolutionary technology that could link directly to the human nervous system." Nathaniel's voice remained steady, but his knuckles whitened around his glass. Their car went off Laconia Bridge. Your father was supposed to be with them as security detail, but he called in sick at the last minute. That doesn't make him responsible. The prototype disappeared from the wreckage. 3 months later, Reed Tech filed patents for similar technology. Nathaniel's gaze bored into hers. Your father built his company on stolen innovation and my parents' blood. Amber shook her head, denying the accusation even as doubt crept in. If that were true, you could have taken legal action. I was 14, Amber. By the time I understood what happened, the statute of limitations had expired. Your father covered his tracks well. So this marriage. Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. It's revenge. You're using me to destroy him. Justice, Nathaniel corrected. Your father sacrificed my parents for profit. Now he's sacrificed his daughter to save himself. Amber stepped back, file clutched to her chest. I'm just collateral damage in your vendetta. Something flickered across his features. Regret, perhaps. You weren't supposed to become complicated. Complicated, she echoed. Is that what I am? Before he could answer, his phone rang with a distinctive tone. Nathaniel checked the display, his expression hardening. We'll continue this later. I have to take this. Of course you do. Anger and betrayal fueled her words. Business always comes first, doesn't it? She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. The security feeds picked up unusual activity at the east perimeter this afternoon. Until we identify the threat, you don't leave the grounds without proper escort. Concerned for your investment? His jaw tightened. Concerned for your safety. Why? Planning to destroy my father would be easier if something happened to me. That's not. Nathaniel cut himself off as his phone rang again. We're not finished here. But Amber was already walking away, mind reeling with revelations. In her suite, she dumped the contents of the file onto her bed, searching for anything to disprove Nathaniel's accusations. Instead, she found more damning evidence. Internal memos from her father to Blackwood executives warning of security vulnerabilities, a police report noting Winston's suspicious absence, and financial records showing a sudden influx of capital to her father's accounts days after the accident. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Fairchild entered with a garment bag. Mr. Blackwood asked me to remind you about tonight's foundation dinner. I'm not going. The housekeeper hesitated. He was quite insistent, Mrs. Blackwood. I don't care if he... Amber stopped, noticing something odd about the garment bag. That's not one of the dresses the stylist selected. Mrs. Fairchild's expression remained neutral as she unzipped the bag, revealing a simple black dress Amber recognized from her own closet in her father's apartment. Mr. Blackwood had your personal belongings retrieved. He thought you might be more comfortable. The unexpected gesture jarred against her anger. Mrs. Fairchild placed the dress on the bed, then paused at the scattered documents. I was there, you know, the housekeeper said quietly, when they brought news about James and Elizabeth. Master Nathaniel was doing homework in the kitchen. He waited by the window every night for 2 years, certain his parents would come home. The personal detail, freely offered, felt significant. Why are you telling me this? Mrs. Fairchild straightened, professional mask back in place. The car leaves at 7, Mrs. Blackwood. Alone again, Amber gathered the documents. Unable to reconcile the calculating businessman who'd orchestrated her marriage with the boy waiting for parents who would never return. Her phone chimed with a text from Olivia. Dad's acting weird. Says we're moving next week. What's going on? Moving? Winston hadn't mentioned relocating. A tendril of unease curled through Amber's stomach as she dialed her sister. The call connected, but the line was full of static. Liv, can you hear me? Amber? Dad's been. The connection deteriorated into garbled noise before cutting out entirely. When she tried calling back, an automated message informed her the number was no longer in service. Alarmed, she hurried downstairs, intent on finding Nathaniel, only to collide with Jenkins in the hallway. Mrs. Blackwood, I was coming to find you. There's been a security incident. What kind of incident? Cold dread settled in her chest. Jenkins glanced around before lowering his voice. Someone accessed your father's apartment this afternoon. His files were compromised. And your sister, what about Olivia? Amber gripped his arm. She's safe. Mr. Blackwood dispatched a security team when the alarms triggered. They've moved her to a secure location. Relief warred with confusion. Nathaniel has security monitoring my family's apartment? Since the day you married, Jenkins confirmed. Standard protection protocol for family members. The implications spun through her mind. Nathaniel claimed to want revenge against her father, yet he'd extended protection to her sister? None of it made sense. "Take me to my husband," she demanded. Jenkins led her to Nathaniel's private office, a space her key card had never accessed. Inside, Nathaniel stood surrounded by screens displaying security feeds and data streams, barking orders to someone on the phone. "I want a full security detail on the girl until we identify the breach." "No, that's not acceptable. Move her to the Connecticut property if necessary." He terminated the call when he saw Amber, expression grave. "Your sister is safe." So Jenkins said, "What aren't you telling me?" Nathaniel dismissed his security team with a gesture, waiting until they were alone before responding. "Someone broke into your father's apartment looking for something specific. They accessed his safe and took files related to Project Lazarus. My father wouldn't keep incriminating evidence, not evidence. Research." Nathaniel pulled up an image on one of the screens, a grainy security photo of a man in a maintenance uniform. "This individual has been identified as Victor Hawthorne's associate." The tech investor? Amber had seen the name in business publications. "My parents' former business partner." Nathaniel's expression darkened. "And the man who originally commissioned Project Lazarus." A notification flashed on one of the screens. Nathaniel accessed the alert, his face paling slightly as he read the message. Without explanation, he moved to a wall safe hidden behind a painting, retrieving a weathered manila envelope. "Your father's been taken," he said, turning to face her. Hawthorne's men intercepted him, leaving his office. Horror washed through her. "We have to call the police." "That would be inadvisable." Nathaniel placed the envelope on his desk. "There's something you need to see first." Inside the envelope was a faded photograph of two couples at a laboratory celebration, champagne glasses raised in toast. Amber recognized a much younger version of her father standing beside Nathaniel's parents. The fourth person, a sharp-featured man with calculating eyes, she assumed was Victor Hawthorne. What stopped her heart, however, was the pregnant woman beside James Blackwood, Elizabeth Blackwood cradling her belly protectively, her other arm around a beaming Winston Reed. "That's my mother," Amber whispered, recognizing features she'd seen only in old photographs. "No," Nathaniel said quietly. "That's my mother, Elizabeth Blackwood, 5 months pregnant with her second child. I don't understand." But deep inside, a terrible suspicion was taking root. Nathaniel's eyes held her steadily. "The child she was carrying wasn't my father's. DNA tests confirmed it years later. The baby was Winston Reed's daughter." "That's impossible. My mother was Catherine Reed." "Catherine Reed died of ovarian cancer before you were born. She couldn't have children." Nathaniel slid another document toward her, a birth certificate with an unfamiliar name, but her birth date. "My father discovered the affair too late. The accident happened 2 weeks after he confronted them." Amber stared at the certificate, the room tilting around her. "You're saying I'm Elizabeth Blackwood's daughter? My half-sister?" Nathaniel's voice was strained. "And the reason Victor Hawthorne has taken Winston Reed? You've known this all along." Amber's voice barely rose above a whisper as the devastating truth settled in her bones. "You married your own half-sister. The contract specifically prevents consummation," Nathaniel replied, his clinical tone at odds with the bombshell he'd just dropped. "The marriage was never meant to be real. But the revenge was." Amber gripped the edge of his desk to steady herself. "You orchestrated all of this to punish my father, your mother's lover." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "Winston Reed let my mother die? The affair compromised security protocols. He chose to protect himself rather than them." A notification flashed across multiple screens simultaneously. Nathaniel's attention snapped to the central monitor where lines of code scrolled rapidly. "We're being hacked," he muttered, fingers flying across a keyboard. "Someone's breaching the main firewall." Emergency lights activated throughout the mansion as security protocols engaged. Jenkins burst through the door. "Sir, we've got multiple perimeter breaches. Team 2 is down. Lock the house down. Activate Protocol Phoenix." Nathaniel turned to Amber. "Stay here. This room is secure. I'm not hiding while my father." "This isn't about your father anymore." Nathaniel grasped her shoulders. "Hawthorne wants Project Lazarus, and he believes you're the key." "Me? Why would I?" "Because you're Elizabeth's daughter," Jenkins interjected, checking his weapon. The biometric locks on the original Lazarus interface were keyed to the Blackwood genetic signature. The overhead lights flickered. On the security monitors, masked figures swarmed through the gardens. "They're after the prototype," Nathaniel confirmed, moving to another hidden safe behind a bookshelf. "My father recovered it from the crash site before the authorities arrived." The safe door swung open, revealing a metallic case the size of a small laptop. Nathaniel lifted it reverently. 20 years of protecting this, and now. An explosion rocked the West Wing. Alarms blared as smoke detectors registered the breach. "Sir, we're compromised," Jenkins reported. "Gamma team is cut off. We need to move now." Nathaniel hesitated, eyes locking with Amber's. "I never meant for you to be in danger. You just wanted to use me," she countered, bitter understanding crystallizing. "The perfect revenge. Marry your enemy's daughter, take control of his company, then reveal she was never his to begin with." It wasn't that simple. For the first time, Nathaniel's composure cracked. "When I found out you were Elizabeth's daughter, I thought." Another explosion, closer this time, cut him off. Jenkins moved to the door. "The tunnel, sir. It's our only option." Nathaniel pressed the metal case into Amber's hands. "Whatever you think of me, Hawthorne cannot get this. It wasn't just a medical breakthrough. It's a weapon in the wrong hands. Why should I trust you?" She clutched the case nonetheless. "Because I'm the only family you have left who isn't lying to you." Before she could respond, the office door burst open. A canister rolled across the floor, immediately spewing dense smoke. Jenkins fired twice before collapsing. Nathaniel lunged for Amber, shielding her as masked figures poured into the room. "Run!" he shouted, pressing a key card into her palm. "North stairwell, 3rd floor, room 312. A taser struck Nathaniel in the back. He convulsed, but managed to slam his fist against a red button under his desk. Steel shutters descended over the windows as the ventilation system reversed, pulling the smoke away. "Find the prototype," ordered a voice Amber recognized from business news segments, Victor Hawthorne, "and secure the girl. She's worth more than all of you combined." Clutching the case to her chest, Amber scrambled toward a hidden door that had opened behind a panel when Nathaniel hit the emergency button. The narrow passage beyond plunged her into darkness as the door sealed shut behind her. Her key card illuminated small floor lights as she ran, the sounds of struggle fading behind her. Following Nathaniel's instructions, she found the north stairwell and climbed to the 3rd floor, the level her own key card had never accessed. Room 312 required both the special key card and a biometric scan. Amber pressed her trembling hand to the panel, gasping when it flashed green in recognition. The door opened to a nursery frozen in time. Pale yellow walls, stuffed animals arranged on shelves, a white crib with a mobile hanging motionless above. A girl's nursery, prepared 22 years ago for a baby who never came home. On the changing table lay a single sheet of paper with Nathaniel's handwriting. "If you're reading this, I've failed to protect you." The truth is in her diary. 3rd shelf, blue book. With shaking hands, Amber located Elizabeth Blackwood's journal. Inside the front cover was a photograph of Elizabeth with an infant Nathaniel and a handwritten note. "For my daughter, may you forgive what necessity demanded." The journal's final entry, dated 2 days before the accident, contained a confession and a warning. "James knows about the baby. The affair was a mistake, but I cannot regret the child. Hawthorne suspects the prototype uses my genetic markers as security. If he discovers the baby is Winston's, not James's, both my children will become targets. We're leaving tonight. If you're reading this, something went wrong. Trust only Nathaniel. He is your blood." An explosion rocked the house, closer than before. Clutching the diary and prototype, Amber faced a terrible choice: flee to safety, or return for Nathaniel, the half-brother who had married her for revenge, but was now the only person who could explain the truth of her existence. From below came the sound of gunfire, followed by Nathaniel's voice, raw with pain. "She's not in the house. Check the grounds." He was buying her time to escape. Amber's decision was made in that moment. She would take the prototype and the diary, find Olivia, and uncover the whole truth before deciding whether Nathaniel deserved her trust or her contempt. As she slipped through the nursery's hidden exit into the night, Amber Blackwood, not Reed, vowed to reclaim her true identity and the legacy that had been stolen from her 22 years ago. The cheap motel room on the outskirts of Worcester was a far cry from the Blackwood mansion. Amber sat cross-legged on a sagging mattress, surrounded by pages from Elizabeth's diary, the metal case containing Project Lazarus locked in the bathroom. 3 days had passed since her escape. 3 days of dodging suspicious cars, paying cash for everything, and sleeping with one eye open. Her burner phone contained a single contact, Olivia, now safely hidden at a boarding school in Vermont under an assumed name. Thanks to emergency funds Amber had withdrawn before her accounts could be frozen. The television murmured in the background, local news reporting on the security incident at the Blackwood estate. According to official statements, an attempted robbery had been thwarted with minimal property damage and no casualties. Lies. Amber had seen Jenkins fall, had heard gunfire as she fled, had glimpsed the chaos through security cameras she accessed on her way out. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, Harbor Point, Pier 17, 9 p.m., come alone if you want answers. W.R. Her father, alive. Every instinct screamed trap, yet what choice did she have? The diary entries painted a confusing picture. Elizabeth genuinely loved both James Blackwood and Winston Reed, torn between her husband and her lover. The affair had been brief, but resulted in pregnancy. When James discovered the truth, he'd threatened to divorce Elizabeth and take Nathaniel, leaving her with nothing. The accident that killed them both had never been fully explained. Elizabeth's final entries suggested she feared James might do something desperate, yet she also mentioned threats from V regarding the prototype. Victor Hawthorne, the third player in this twisted game. At 8:45, Amber arrived at Harbor Point, Project Lazarus concealed in her backpack. The waterfront was deserted, evening fog rolling in from the bay, shrouding the warehouses in ghostly gray. She kept to the shadows, scanning for surveillance or ambush points. A solitary figure stood at the end of Pier 17, silhouetted against the harbor lights. Even at a distance, she recognized her father's stooped posture. That's far enough, she called when 20 feet separated them. Winston turned, his face haggard, a bandage visible at his temple. Amber, thank God. Were you working with Hawthorne? She remained beyond his reach. Did you help him attack the mansion? No. Victor took me against my will. Winston's voice cracked. He's been looking for Lazarus for 20 years. When Nathaniel married you, Victor realized what it meant, that you're Elizabeth's daughter. Something you never told me. Winston flinched. I wanted to protect you. If anyone knew you were a Blackwood by blood. Why? What's so special about Blackwood blood? It's the genetic key. The Lazarus interface was groundbreaking. A neural network that could download consciousness, preserve it beyond physical death. But Elizabeth encoded it to her genetic signature as a safeguard. Winston took a tentative step forward. You and Nathaniel are the only ones who can activate it. Why would she do that? To prevent weaponization. Elizabeth realized too late what Victor intended to use it for, targeted memory manipulation. Imagine being able to rewrite someone's mind, implant false memories, extract secrets. Winston's eyes darted nervously around the pier. Victor funded the project, but when Elizabeth discovered his military connections, she and James decided to hide it. And you? What was your role? Winston's shoulders slumped. I loved her. When she told me she was carrying my child, I would have done anything for her, including helping her and James escape with the prototype. But they died instead. It was supposed to be me driving that night. Guilt etched deep lines in Winston's face. I was the decoy while they took an alternate route. But Victor's men were waiting at both points. I survived. They didn't. The sound of footsteps on wood planking alerted them to company. Winston's eyes widened in terror. We need to go? Now. Too late. Floodlights blazed, illuminating the pier from multiple angles. Armed figures emerged from the fog, surrounding them in a tightening circle. Victor Hawthorne appeared, impeccably dressed despite the setting. Family reunion? How touching. Let her go. Victor, Winston pleaded. She doesn't know anything. She knows enough to bring the prototype. Hawthorne's gaze fixed on Amber's backpack. A wise decision, Ms. Blackwood. Or should I say, Ms. Reed? Your parentage is rather complicated. You killed Elizabeth, Amber accused. You caused the accident. A regrettable necessity. James became uncooperative when he learned of Elizabeth's indiscretion. Hawthorne smiled thinly. Your mother made a critical error in trusting her secrets to this man. He gestured dismissively at Winston. Did he tell you he was the one who revealed their escape route? That's a lie. Winston lurched forward, only to be restrained by Hawthorne's men. Is it? You made a call from your apartment the night before the accident. My men were listening. Hawthorne approached Amber. Your father betrayed both Elizabeth and James to save himself. Old habits die hard, wouldn't you say? Cold certainty settled in Amber's chest. You're lying. Ask him yourself. Ask him about the $1 million deposited in his offshore account 2 days after their deaths. Ask him why he took an orphaned infant and claimed her as his own. Hawthorne extended his hand. The prototype, please. A gunshot cracked through the night. One of Hawthorne's men dropped, then another. In the confusion, a dark figure moved through the fog with lethal efficiency. Nathaniel. He reached Amber in seconds, placing himself between her and Hawthorne. Blood stained his tactical gear, his face bruised, but his eyes clear with purpose. Take the prototype and run, he ordered, pressing something into her hand. A GPS tracker. Jenkins is waiting 2 blocks north. Go. I won't leave you. This isn't a debate. His gaze softened momentarily. Trust me, just this once. Winston broke free in the chaos, stumbling toward them. Amber, don't listen. He's using you. Another shot rang out. Winston staggered, red blooming across his chest. As he fell, his eyes fixed on Amber with desperate regret. I'm sorry, he gasped. I loved you as my own. Always. Amber's world narrowed to her father's fading heartbeat, Nathaniel's urgent voice, and the weight of Project Lazarus in her backpack. A legacy of betrayal that had destroyed 2 families and was about to claim more victims if she didn't act. His blood pressure's dropping. Jenkins barked into his radio as the medical team worked on Winston in the back of the unmarked van. ETA to the facility? For minutes, the driver responded, swerving through Boston's narrow streets. Amber gripped her father's hand. The man who'd raised her, lied to her, possibly betrayed her real mother, yet still took a bullet trying to protect her. His eyes fluttered open, focusing on her with effort. Not what? He seems, Winston whispered hoarsely. Save your strength, Amber urged. Nathaniel. Elizabeth's diary. December 14th. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth before his eyes rolled back. The medical team moved with renewed urgency as the van screeched to a halt at a private clinic owned by a Blackwood subsidiary. Winston was rushed inside, leaving Amber in the vehicle with Jenkins, blood on her clothes and her father's cryptic message echoing in her mind. December 14th. The diary entry from that date had been torn out. Where's Nathaniel? She demanded. Jenkins pressed a bandage to his own wounded shoulder. Extracting himself. Standard protocol after exposure. And Hawthorne escaped with 3 men. We have teams tracking them. Jenkins studied her with professional assessment. The prototype? Amber tightened her grip on her backpack. Safe. Where's Olivia? Still at the boarding school. Security team in place. Jenkins' expression softened fractionally. She's safe, Mrs. Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood made your sister's protection a priority from day one. The mention of her married name, a name that was apparently her birthright, sent a fresh wave of confusion through Amber. Less than 2 weeks ago, she'd been Amber Reed, grudgingly entering a contract marriage to save her family. Now she was Amber Blackwood twice over, by both blood and law, with a dying father who might not be her father, a half-brother for a husband, and a corporate war with lives in the balance. Take me to Elizabeth's diary, she said. I need to see what was on that missing page. The Blackwood estate's East Wing had sustained significant damage in the attack, but Nathaniel's secure office remained intact. Jenkins escorted her inside, his weapon drawn despite the additional security teams patrolling the grounds. Mr. Blackwood keeps copies of all important documents in the vault, he explained, entering a complex code into a hidden panel. The wall slid aside, revealing a walk-in vault lined with safety deposit boxes. Jenkins directed her to box 377, Elizabeth Blackwood. Inside were photographs, legal documents, and a blue leather notebook identical to the diary Amber had found in the nursery. This copy, however, was complete. December 14th, 20 years ago. James knows everything. Not just about the baby, but about Winston's duplicity. The offshore account, the leaked security protocols, the meeting with Victor's associates. I defended Winston, refused to believe it, but the evidence is damning. James says Winston has been working for Victor all along, feeding him information about Lazarus, about our movements, about the safeguards I'd built into the system. I can't reconcile the man I loved with these betrayals. James wants to confront him, but I fear what might happen. If Winston truly is Victor's agent, none of us are safe. We're leaving tonight, taking Nathaniel and the prototype. James has arranged new identities. If something happens to us, Nathaniel must protect the baby. My daughter will be the final key, the genetic failsafe that ensures Lazarus can never be weaponized as Victor intends. Amber sank into a chair, the diary trembling in her hands. Winston, a double agent? It contradicted everything he'd told her at the pier. Someone had removed this page from the diary in the nursery. But who? And why? A soft knock at the office door preceded Mrs. Fairchild's entrance. The housekeeper's usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, her arm in a sling. "Mr. Blackwood has returned," she announced. "He's with your sister in the South guest suite." "Olivia." Alarm shot through Amber. "Why is she here? She's supposed to be at the school." "Hawthorne's men found her." Mr. Blackwood intercepted them during the extraction. Amber ran through the mansion's damaged corridors, the prototype still clutched in her backpack, the diary entry burning in her mind. When she burst into the South Suite, she found Olivia huddled on a sofa under a shock blanket, a security team stationed at every entrance. "Amber." Olivia flew into her arms. "They said Dad's been shot." "Is he?" "He's in surgery." Amber held her sister tightly, noting the bruise on her cheek. "Did they hurt you?" "They were taking me from the school when Mr. Blackwood's team arrived." Olivia pulled back. "Amber, they knew things about me, about us. They said I'm not really a Reed, that we're not even sisters." Before Amber could respond, Nathaniel entered, his tactical gear exchanged for a simple black shirt and slacks. A bandage wrapped his forearm, and a bruise darkened his jaw, but his composure remained intact. "Olivia needs to rest," he said quietly. Dr. Matthews gave her a mild sedative. As if on cue, Olivia's eyelids drooped. Security personnel helped her to the bedroom, leaving Amber alone with Nathaniel. "I read the missing diary page," she said without preamble. "The one that claims my father, Winston, betrayed my mother." Nathaniel's expression remained carefully neutral. "And I don't know what to believe." Amber squared her shoulders. "But Olivia said Hawthorne's men told her we're not sisters." "That's a lie, isn't it? She's Winston's daughter." A weighted silence fell between them. Nathaniel moved to the window, fingers tracing a crack in the bulletproof glass. "DNA doesn't lie," he finally said. "The tests I ordered when I first identified you revealed something unexpected. Olivia is a genetic match to you, a half-sister. She's not Winston's biological child either." The room seemed to tilt beneath Amber's feet. "Then whose daughter is she?" Nathaniel turned, his eyes holding a truth he seemed reluctant to speak. "James Blackwood's. My father's. She was born 8 months after the accident, to a surrogate Winston had hired. Part of the contingency plan Victor had arranged." "That's impossible." Winston needed leverage over the Blackwood estate if Elizabeth's plan succeeded. A second Blackwood heir would provide that leverage. Nathaniel's voice hardened. "He didn't count on my father discovering the surrogate before the accident. Didn't know James had changed his will to protect both his children, including the one not yet born." Amber stared at the man who was her half-brother, her legal husband, and now apparently Olivia's half-brother too. Their family tree had become a twisted knot of deception and blood ties that defied conventional understanding. "Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning?" she demanded. "Would you have believed me?" Nathaniel's gaze was steady. "Or would you have seen it as another manipulation?" Before she could answer, Jenkins appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. "Sir, Mr. Reed is out of surgery. The doctors are requesting Mrs. Blackwood's presence immediately. They don't expect him to regain consciousness." Winston Reed died at 3:17 a.m., his hand clutched in Amber's, his final whispered words a confession that answered some questions while raising others. "Protected you both." "Best I could. Elizabeth made me promise. Hawthorne has James's backup drive." For 3 days, Amber barely left Olivia's side as they both processed revelations that had shattered their understanding of family. The sisters, half-sisters through Elizabeth's liaison with Winston for Amber, and James's paternity for Olivia, clung to the one certainty in their unraveling world: their bond with each other. Nathaniel maintained a respectful distance, coordinating security from his rebuilt office and providing updates on Hawthorne's movements through Jenkins. The manhunt had expanded internationally, with Hawthorne's assets frozen and his corporate allies abandoning him as evidence of his involvement in the Blackwood death surfaced. On the fourth morning, Amber found Nathaniel in the music room, standing motionless before the piano, his reflection fractured in the polished black surface. "Olivia's asking for you," she said from the doorway. He nodded without turning. "How is she?" "Confused, angry, resilient." Amber stepped into the room. Like her brother, apparently. The word hung between them. Brother, redefining boundaries that marriage licenses and contracts couldn't properly address. "I've drawn up annulment papers," Nathaniel said, finally facing her. "Your attorneys can review them at your convenience." "And the company?" "My father's, Winston's assets. They're yours and Olivia's, as his legal heirs. I've recused myself from any involvement." Amber studied the man before her, the calculating businessman giving way to something more complex. In the weeks since their contract marriage, she'd glimpsed layers beneath his carefully constructed facade. The boy who lost his parents, the brother who discovered a sister in the most convoluted circumstances, the man who'd thrown himself between her and danger on that pier. "Why did you really marry me?" she asked. "The truth this time." Nathaniel's gaze remained steady. "Initially, to gain control of Reed Pharmaceuticals and access Winston's research. I believed he had information about Hawthorne's involvement in my parents' deaths. And when you confirmed I was Elizabeth's daughter, everything changed. The admission seemed difficult for him. I needed to protect you without revealing your identity. Marriage provided legal means to secure your safety while I tracked Hawthorne. You could have told me the truth. Would you have believed that the man who raised you stole you from a crash site? That the mother you never knew designed your genetic code to safeguard technology that could transform humanity or destroy it?" Nathaniel shook his head. "I made the best decision with the information I had. By making me fall in love with my own brother?" The words escaped before she could censor them. Nathaniel went perfectly still. "What did you say?" Amber hadn't meant to voice the confusion that had tormented her, the inappropriate feelings that had developed despite the clinical nature of their arrangement. Feelings that became infinitely more complicated with the revelation of their shared blood. "It doesn't matter," she said quickly. "The annulment makes sense. We can focus on finding Hawthorne and Amber." Nathaniel interrupted her retreat, closing the distance between them. The DNA tests weren't conclusive. She froze. "What?" Elizabeth's genetic profile showed anomalies consistent with chimeric DNA, a rare condition where a person carries two distinct genetic signatures. "It appears some of your markers match hers, but others don't." His voice softened. "You may not be her biological daughter after all." Hope and confusion warred within her. "Then whose daughter am I?" "I've authorized additional testing." Nathaniel hesitated. But Winston's final statement suggests another possibility. Elizabeth's research partner, Dr. Elaine Foster, disappeared the same week as the accident. She was single, using fertility treatments, and Elizabeth's closest friend. Understanding dawned. "You think she was my real mother?" "That Elizabeth was protecting her child." The diary mentions a contingency plan for E's baby that Winston was entrusted with. "I always assumed it referred to Elizabeth, but it could have been Elaine." Nathaniel's expression remained carefully controlled. "If that's true, we're not related by blood." The implications hung between them, unspoken but undeniable. "The prototype is still the priority," Amber said, redirecting to safer ground. "Even if I'm not Elizabeth's daughter, Hawthorne believes I am. He'll come for me again. I've arranged a secure location overseas. Jenkins can escort you and Olivia tonight." "Running won't solve this," Amber countered. "Hawthorne has James's backup drive with the operational codes. Combined with the prototype and a Blackwood genetic signature, Olivia's, he could still weaponize Project Lazarus." Nathaniel's expression hardened with resolve. "What do you propose?" "We finish this. Together." Amber held his gaze. "We use me as bait." The plan came together over the next 24 hours. A carefully orchestrated leak about Amber traveling to the Blackwood Research Facility in Vermont to unlock family secrets. A skeleton security team making the facility appear vulnerable, and a specialized strike force waiting in concealed positions. As Amber prepared for her role, she found Nathaniel in his office, reviewing security protocols with Jenkins. "It's time," she said simply. Nathaniel dismissed Jenkins with a nod, then turned to Amber. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. For Elizabeth, for James, for Winston despite his flaws, and for Olivia." She stepped closer. And for us, whatever us turns out to mean when this is over. Something shifted in Nathaniel's eyes, the controlled businessman giving way to raw emotion. If anything happens to you, it won't. She placed the prototype case on his desk. Because you'll be with me every step. He hesitated, then reached out, his fingers brushing hers. When I watched Winston fall on that pier, I realized something. Revenge wasn't driving me anymore. Keeping you safe was all that mattered. Amber turned her hand, capturing his. Then let's end this so we can both be safe. So we can discover what might exist between us without shadows of the past. 2 days later, Victor Hawthorne walked into their trap, driven by decades of obsession and the proximity of his life's ambition. The confrontation left him in custody, 3 of his men dead, and the backup drive secured. As dawn broke over the Vermont facility, Amber found Nathaniel on the observation deck, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. Without words, she joined him at the railing, their shoulders touching. The DNA results came back, he said quietly. Elaine Foster was your mother. We're not related. Relief and something more powerful washed through her. So what happens now? Nathaniel turned to her, the mask of Blackwood Industries' ruthless CEO completely gone. That depends on you. The annulment papers are still on my desk. Amber studied the man before her. Complicated, flawed, but ultimately driven by the same need for family and truth that had guided her own journey. What if I don't want an annulment? Then we start over. He took her hand, his touch no longer restrained by propriety or genetics. Not as a business arrangement or a means to an end, but as 2 people who found each other in the most unlikely circumstances. As the sun crested the mountains, Amber Blackwood made a choice that had nothing to do with contracts or obligations, and everything to do with the heart that had been guiding her all along.